Thanks for the kind introduction. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. I remember being with this esteemed organization back in, I think it was 2011. When I first started running for Secretary of State as one of my first trips around the state of Oregon, and I always remember it very fondly. I appreciate you all being so passionate about public policy, taking your time to be involved and become educated about the issues. We need more of that kind of involvement. And Kathy, thank you very much for standing up and running for office. You did a great job. As I've learned, sometimes you have to run and lose before being successful. That's okay. It's okay to do it. And I appreciate you taking over the hard job of running the party. But it's very important. Yeah. And Sid, Commissioner, thank you very much for your excellent service. You, I know here, appreciate the high quality of commissioners, and Sid has done an outstanding job, in my opinion, here. It's just, I always use your efforts here in Lane County as an example of what can be accomplished when you have really competent, hardworking, Republican-oriented people involved in local government. And the nice thing is, all over the state, there is a lot of county commissioners that are Republican that are doing a great job. You know, even places that you don't expect it. Lane County, you have a majority, right? Washington County, there's a majority of county commissioners that are Republicans, and that shows what is really possible when you have good people who focus on solving problems in those areas. Let me get to the issue of hand. Let me just make a few comments, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, and then open it up to questions and have a little dialogue. And please feel free to enjoy your lunch. I'm going to talk about why I'm running to be your next governor, and then most importantly, what I intend to do as your governor. I think that's something that you really want to question people. I'm running to be your next governor for a simple reason. To fix the big problems in Oregon that have been avoided, ignored, and frankly, made a lot worse with 3 years with Governor Brown in charge. And I think that Oregon has a lot going for it. We have one of the most beautiful places in the world to live. Look at this day. It almost reminded me of Bend when I came over here today. Clear blue sky, cold. Yeah, we live in one of the world's most beautiful places. We have an abundance of natural resources. Our people are kind, generous, a little bit quirky at times, independent-minded. And truly, we have wonderful people and a proud past in this state. But increasingly, my concern is about our future. The current direction the state is headed, the trajectory is not a good place. And it should be so much better than that. And as I'm traveling around the state, talking to lots of people, as you can imagine right now, and no matter if you've lived your entire life in the state of Oregon like I did. I grew up in Roseburg, actually not too far from here. No matter if you grew up in this state or are a recent person who's moved to Oregon, all of us feel that things should be better here, that people should be doing better. I know Oregon could be better. Really, Oregon should be one of the best places in the nation to live, work, and play, and importantly, raise a family. And it's just not that way right now. But it's going to start with leadership. Leadership from a governor. Leadership that is a lot more independent and less partisan. Leadership that has an actual interest, and this group will appreciate, interest in creating new ideas instead of just a far left ideology. And leadership that listens. Leadership that encourages everyone to succeed in this state. No matter if you're a rancher or logger living in rural Oregon, no matter if you're a young person working for a startup in downtown Portland, no matter if you're a recent immigrant to Oregon trying to build the American dream in the Willamette Valley. We need a governor who's going to be there for all of these sorts of people. I'll be that type of governor. For those hard-working Oregonians that have been hammered by the high cost of living, the high cost of housing, college tuition, of health care. Incomes just haven't kept up with it. People are feeling squeezed. And too many people are feeling left behind and left out under capering. Now, to help people and to really improve life in this state, there's 4 main problems we need to solve. 4 priorities that I would have as governor. And here they are. The first thing, we have to rescue. And I do mean rescue. I use that word intentionally. We have to rescue our kids, our teachers, and our public schools from an unacceptable status quo. Too many kids are being left behind. The second problem we need to fix is we have to bring some fiscal sanity to our taxes and budget. There's no reason any of us should be asked to pay more in taxes when we have record revenue come in the state of Oregon. Defies common sense. The third thing we need to fix. You can imagine I personally feel strongly about this. We have to save our public health programs and other essential services like foster care for kids from the chaos and incompetence of the Brown administration. There's no nicer way to say it. The chaos and incompetence of the Brown administration. And finally, the most difficult, maybe of all, the fourth problem and priority, is to end the political dysfunction we have in this state and return a sense of purpose, recapture that sense of purpose for state leadership that goes beyond the mere pursuit of power, privilege, and position. Those are the priorities. Now let's dive into those a little bit and talk about them one by one. The first thing is we have to rescue our public schools. I think it's the #1 failure of Governor Brown is her indifference to improving our public schools. Now when I first started running for the legislature in Bend, and Kathy I'm sure will appreciate this, I made it a purpose to go and tour every single school in the Bend-Lapine district. 26, 25 schools. A couple of them wouldn't even allow me to tour, which is a whole nother story. Can you imagine that? They wouldn't even allow me to come in and tour the school. But that was a good experience. I learned a lot from it. And what I saw is that there's lots of hardworking students and teachers, principals, coaches that come every day trying to achieve good results. But unfortunately, state leadership, and specifically this governor, has not been there for them. And there is no better example of that lack of support coming from Governor Brown for our public schools is the 25,000 kids who failed to graduate from Oregon high schools in just the last 3 years alone. Think about what the future holds for those kids. You can't even graduate from high school. We have one of the worst graduation rates in the entire nation. The statistics just came out again for this last year, 3rd worst in the nation. We have one of the shortest school years, some of the biggest class sizes, and despite decades of efforts from some of the best educators across the state, quality rankings remain at the bottom. It is time to fix our runaway pension and retirement system. It is literally eating alive funding that should be going to our kids in classrooms. Now, you may not realize it, but this last legislative session, we passed a K-12 budget that we are sending more money to our schools in Oregon than ever before in the history of this state. We have never seen more money go into our K through 12 schools. Why doesn't it seem like it? It's not getting in the classroom. We increased K through 12 budget $630 million over the last budget. You know where 75% of those dollars went? PERS and health benefits. Out of $630 million, only 25% actually gets to kids. Not acceptable. We have to fix that problem. And we have a governor who continues to ignore it. Here's what I would do as your governor. I will not sign a single new spending bill until I have a PERS reform bill on my desk. And I've replaced the 197 separate teacher contracts we have in the state of Oregon with a single statewide teacher contract that forms the basis for local control, local negotiation, if necessary, binding arbitration. That will push change in our schools. With those two improvements, along with much needed changes in the way we actually educate kids, we need more choice. We actually need to personalize how kids are instructed. With those type of changes, we'll get millions of dollars back in the classroom, improve quality, and importantly, return accountability for having great public schools in this state to me, your governor, to make sure it happens. The second problem we need to fix. We have to bring some fiscal sanity to our taxes. The revenue coming in the state of Oregon right now has never been bigger. The state of Oregon budget over the last 6 years is up an astonishing 45%. Now, how many of you would like to have that kind of increase in your portfolio, your wages? 45% over the last 6 years. The state of Oregon has never seen more money. I've had a front row seat to this being on the House Revenue and Tax Reform Committee. And guess what? You know what Governor Brown's answer to this is? More and more taxes. I had my staff go through and see over the last 3 years how many times she's asked for tax increases. 24 separate times she's asked for a tax increase. 24 times. She seems to define leadership simply by how much she can increase taxes, and she has been successful. Governor Brown has been successful. In 2018, you'll see your taxes go up nearly $900 million on all sorts of things. Tax on cars, bikes, new payroll tax, a new health insurance tax. I think they even increased taxes on beer. Being from Ben, that's particularly bothersome for me, and I hear about it on a frequent basis. Now, as you can imagine, I would do things differently. I think we need better leadership, not more taxes. And we can balance the budget by bringing much needed reform to pension benefits and our spending priorities. We don't need to raise taxes. Thank you. The third problem we need to fix is we have to save our public health programs and other essential services from the chaos and incompetence of the Brown administration. Now, being a physician who's worked on the front lines of delivering health care in this state for 25 years, I know there's lots of people who need and depend on these services. For some of these people, it's actually life or death, literally. And in the past, we had a proud history of delivering these services in innovative ways that drove down the cost of health care and brought much needed access. Unfortunately, under Governor Brown, we don't have that history. It's lagged behind. Now health care has become very divisive, and you'll see it in our current ballot measure campaign in January. It doesn't have to be that way. It just shows, again, a lack of leadership from our government. Now, over the last 5 years, spending on health care in Oregon has gone up substantially, nearly 50%. Now the good news is, nearly 95% of people have access to health care now. That's a good thing. The bad news is, insurance premiums continue to go up at double-digit rates. Some people now are paying more on their monthly health benefits than on their mortgage. And there's no end in sight right now. And millions and millions and millions of dollars have been wasted on a failed bureaucracy that should be going to help some of the neediest people in this state. And you've seen it. You hear the waste. $400 million on Cover Oregon, failed websites, computers, software. $200 million wasted because 50,000 people didn't even qualify for the plan but got health benefits. And recently, it's been exposed by Secretary of State Richardson, about $100 million was wasted in overpayments, missed payments, and just incompetence. That's got to stop. We have to bring a sense of management to that program that's actually going to produce high-quality health care and bring down the cost. Here's what I do as governor and as a physician. I'm doing this, let me be clear, to shine a light and bring accountability to health care. Not because I want people to have less health care, but I want them to have better health and less expensive care. First thing I would do is reorganize how the Oregon Health Plan actually delivers care. We need to focus on prevention and wellness and not paying for disease management. We need to lower the high cost of prescription drugs. And importantly, every person in this state who needs mental health care gets it. Too many people right now are slipping through the cracks. And you see these folks walking on our city streets, actively ill. No one's taking care of them. No one should be slipping through the cracks like that in Oregon. People deserve better than that in the state, and they'll get it. And the fourth problem, fourth priority that may be the most difficult, but the most important, is we have to end the political dysfunction in the state. And we have to return a sense of shared purpose. Recapture that sense of shared purpose that goes beyond the mere pursuit of power, privilege, and position. We need our leaders that look beyond the narrow labels that increasingly divide us, and I don't think define very many of us anymore. Leaders who will focus on policies that bring us together instead of politics that pushes us apart. And over the last 3 years with Governor Brown, that's gotten a lot worse. Governor Brown is fixated on divisive national politics when she should be fixing local problems for Oregonians. And there's no better, or I'd say no worse example of that than those 25,000 kids who failed to graduate from Oregon high schools the last 2 years. They need a voice. They need a champion. Governor Brown has not been there. I will be there, and they'll need some help. I'll bring together the best ideas. Best ideas from independents, Democrats, Republicans to address our big problems, like we have in our schools, like we have in not establishing a sense of shared purpose, that we're all in this together in important ways. And I've done that in the past in the legislature the last 4 years. I've worked with people across the aisle to make groundbreaking legislation. For example, passing legislation that increases access to contraception, essentially making it over the counter. Of protecting public whistleblowers that have the bravery to call out fraud, abuse, and corruption in our state. I've worked across the aisle to deal with our opioid crisis. Really a national epidemic in this state, just killing thousands. But we are one of the few states in the nation where deaths are starting to decline because of the work we've done. Innovative policy. I have a track record of showing that kind of independent leadership that can produce bipartisan results. Now, some of you may not realize it, but the people in the city have been in the Oregon legislature. An overwhelmingly Democrat district. In fact, it is the most Democratic seat held by a Republican in the entire state, by far. My neighbors know me and trust me, and have elected me twice in that district. And they trust that I'll lead with an open mind, a caring heart, and a thoughtful voice. And if anyone is concerned about my loyalties, as governor, I'll have only one boss, and that's the people of Oregon. Now, I believe that Oregon is hungry for new leadership. Leadership that actually has the courage to take on these big challenges and make the necessary changes to solve our big problems. We used to do that. We used to be known for that in Oregon, of solving big problems. You're nationally recognized. We can be that sort of Oregon again. It's going to take all of us to get there. So if you love Oregon like I do, if you know Oregon can be so much better than what we see right now, join me in this cause, in this campaign. I need your leadership. I need your passion. Certainly, I need any financial contributions that can come your way. And ultimately, I'm going to need your vote. And it's helpful if you spread the word at this point. That word of mouth, don't underestimate how important it is. If we do all those things, I'm confident that together we can produce a historic victory in Oregon and bring the change that we all know Oregon so desperately needs. So, I appreciate your time. I'd love to take your questions and hear your comments.
How would you balance, PERS is a problem, obviously, but, there was also a promise made to the Tier 1 people that a long time ago that they would receive this, so they planned their lives according to that. But it's also driving it's a real issue for just financially.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Great question. It's probably the most important question on the table right now. One that our governors chose to ignore over and over again. It is a moral imperative that we fix the PERS problem. A moral imperative to those loyal public employees that have retired and are dependent on those benefits. It's a moral imperative to assure them that those dollars are going to be there for them. But I'm concerned if we continue the current trajectory, the value of what their retirement that they're expecting is not going to be there. I think it's a moral imperative to taxpayers that are paying more and more taxes in Oregon that they get the essential services that they deserve. And importantly, it's a moral imperative to our kids to get those dollars back in the classroom so they have an education that's not one of the worst in the nation, but one of the best. Here's what we do. We can't go back and take dollars from people who've already retired. A deal is a deal. I think that's only fair, and that's what the state Supreme Court has said. But we can change the benefit structure of how people retire in the future. We do all sorts of things with regards to that. The state Supreme Court has ruled recently and made it clear. For example, we can limit the monthly payouts. No more Bilotti-type payouts. And I just don't say that because I'm a beaver, okay? I'd say that if it was an Oregon State. But no more Bilotti-type payouts. We can cap that. Right? It's all based on your final average salary. We can cap the salary that we're going to use for benefits. Second thing we can do is we can have our public employees actually contribute to their own retirement fund. Novel concept in the state of Oregon, I understand. We're the only state in the nation that our public employees don't contribute. And third and final thing we can do is we need to bring it into the PERS fund. It's a flawed concept. It's called a defined benefit retirement plan, and it's been phased out in the public sector years ago. We need to bring it to an end and transition all our public employees to a typical 401k. That will save billions every budget cycle and allow us to do all the things that we're talking about with regards to improving our schools and our healthcare system. And it's fair. Yes, sir.
I believe you're still in favor of open primaries, Knute?
No, I worked on the open primaries in the past, but I think the people of Oregon have made their will known. I think a better concept is to actually have a separate primary now for independent and non-affiliated voters. That, importantly, any candidate could try to get their endorsement or their nomination. So you keep the Republican primary intact, you keep the Democratic primary intact, and then you create essentially a third primary for non-affiliated independent voters that any candidate can seek that nomination. I think it's a better way to go. And I've had a bill in the legislature a couple of times now, and of course the Democrats don't like that idea at all because they don't want to give a voice to the independent and non-affiliated voter right now. They squeeze those folks to the sideline, and I just don't think it's fair. They need to be engaged and involved in the primary process.
Good.
I appreciate you being here today. Thank you. Could you talk about Measure 101, where you are on that, and then also how do you predict the February session going, if it passes and if it doesn't?
Yeah, great question. Measure 101, does everyone know what that is? Just what? No. Yeah, don't feel bad if you don't know that. It's just kind of getting going. You just qualified for the ballot, and you'll be getting your ballots here pretty darn certain, I think January 4th or 6th. So here's a little primer on Measure 101. We passed, unfortunately, in the legislature a sales tax on health insurance, a 1.5%, to send more dollars to the Oregon Health Authority. Now remember, the Oregon Health Authority is that agency that's had so much incompetence and waste, and we're going to send them now another $300 million from a sales tax on health insurance. Now, I don't think we need that. There's plenty of dollars in our state budget to pay for the Medicaid expansion population. That's what the people who want this tax say it's needed for. Not true. There's plenty of revenue to take care of those folks. And importantly, it's just an unfair tax because not everyone pays it. The tax is only going to be on private insurance, small group and large group and individuals in our K-12 school districts. Importantly, I left out big corporations that self-insure, and of course, government unions will not pay it. Now, don't get me wrong. I think we all should share in helping pay for people on Medicaid, if that's the goal of our state. And I think it should. But we all should share that equally. And it shouldn't just fall on a few people to pay for that. And it really shouldn't fall on the individual market. And how many of you tried to buy insurance on the individual market and seen the prices? So we're going to put even more expense on the individual market. During the legislative session, myself and a few others had a plan to take care of paying for the Medicaid expansion population, which unfortunately President Obama didn't accommodate how we act. He gave health care to all these people, but he left out one little detail: how we're going to pay for it. Okay? We left that to the states to figure out how to pay for it. But we were able to do it. We had a counter proposal that would have brought some efficiency to the Oregon Health Authority. That would have saved about $100 million right there. We're going to increase the cigarette tax and added a new food tax and increase the assessment on hospitals. That would have brought more than enough money to pay for those things. So I urge a no vote on Measure 101. I'm going to tell you. If it goes down to defeat, which I hope it does, the next legislative session will fill that hole. And it's actually now a smaller hole because of all the waste and problems that we've identified in the Oregon Health Authority. Importantly, 50,000 people that were on the rolls that shouldn't be getting health care. We save over $100 million right there. So that amount shrinks. Good, hardworking people of Oregon provided over $50 million in increased tax revenue we weren't expecting. So you start combining these things, it won't be hard for the legislature to fill that difference.
Who came up with this idea of this sales tax on health insurance?
Salem Democratic leadership and Governor Brown. Remember I said increase your tax is $900 million. This is $300 million of the increase. There's other little things like a sales tax on automobiles and a sales tax on bikes and a new payroll tax, and things like that.
Isn't part of that allowing, they're not saying it on the news, but isn't part of this thing offering free abortions to illegal aliens and anybody that happens to come into the state of Oregon?
Yep. So one of the things it did was also provide more revenue for Oregon Health Authority to expand access to abortion in the state of Oregon. And importantly, to people who have no residency and could even be in the country illegally. Essentially, it makes Oregon a magnet state for abortion treatments. I think we should be doing everything possible to make abortion as rare as possible, not encouraging people to come to Oregon to have treatment.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the clean energy, the clean energy job skill?
Yeah. I don't call it that. It's going to be one of the big topics in the 2018 short session. It shouldn't be. The short session was not designed for big, new, complex legislation. It was designed for emergency and budget situations, but the Salem Democrats seem to have forgotten what the voters of Oregon told us to do with that short session. So they introduced what I call the cap and trade system on carbon. So essentially places a complex new tax on carbon. The tax is going to raise, I'm glad everyone's sitting down for this, $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion. And you'd think maybe that would go to our schools or to taking care of people's health care, or making sure that we don't have one of the worst mental health care systems in the entire nation. No, it's not going to go to any of those things. It's going to go to the Department of Environmental Quality for state bureaucrats to then hand out in a crony capitalism fashion to their friends with green energy projects. Sound familiar to anyone?
Yeah.
Can you say Betsy? Betsy 2? Betsy 2.0? A complex business energy tax credit scheme that wasted $1 billion and $300 million of it, that's under active criminal investigation by the Attorney General. Where state employees were so crooked that they're going to jail for corruption from the program, and the governor wants to do this over again? That makes no sense.
Could it be punishment for not passing their corporate sales tax?
It could be. Yes.
So the Democrats and Ben, you won them over. How are you going to do that in Portland?
Yeah. I think people are hungry for new leadership that is actually focused on fixing problems. That's open-minded. That has a thoughtful voice. And I approach legislating, and my neighbors and my constituents in Bend know this is my approach. I take the approach of a physician problem solver. Or when someone comes to me as a patient, and I listen to their problem. I gather the necessary facts. I do my research, and then I roll up my sleeve and fix their problems. And I don't ask them if they're Republican or Democrat or Independent. I just get to work fixing the problem. And I think people are hungry for that, and they'll listen to it. And look, people are fed up in Portland. Fed up with the deterioration in the quality of life. I have no more receptive audience when I'm going around the state right now. It's not in Roseburg, my hometown anymore, even though it's very positive, as you can imagine, especially when mom shows up to the event. That tends to bring the best out of the audience. I have some of my most receptive audiences in Portland. People are fed up with the decrease in quality of life, the congestion, the high cost of housing, the homeless problem, the abysmal condition of Portland public schools. With long-term establishment, Democrat politicians not fixing the problem, people are fed up. And they want someone to fix their problems. They're hungry for that. And we're going to be that kind of leader for them.
Yeah. I'd like to go back a ways to ask how you would have handled the situation over in Eastern Oregon. I thought our governor was locked up in her ivory tower. I thought that was handled very poorly. I'd just like to know how you, coming from that side of the mountain, how would you have handled something like that?
Yeah, federal issue, federal jurisdiction, but I think the governor should have been more patient with that situation, should have been taking a more active role in talking to people and bringing people together instead of kind of pushing the issue to an unfortunate conclusion.
She never even went over there.
She never went over there. No.
Wondered, you know,
She
it
should have
seems to me she didn't try to do anything, and that man's death was on her.
You know, as a governor, one of the most important roles you have, and I've seen this even as in a legislature, especially as a governor, you have a lot of what I call soft power. And one of the most important tools of your soft power is to convene people. To be that person who gets people around the table, talk about the issue, and then try to align people to get to a peaceful solution. And we just don't see the governor having willingness or ability to do that kind of convening. To be that person who can lead and get people together, no matter who they are at that table. No matter if they're her friends or not, you need to be able to have that convening ability, and she just doesn't have it. Nor shows an ability to even try.
I have a lot of beefs, and I'm very upset. But I'm just going to keep it to two. One, we have a horrendous amount of laws. None of them are being enforced, both criminal and non-criminal. And it is so out of control that I don't think we'll ever get it under control. I mean, we have people killing people. It's okay. We let them walk. Dualies, driving under the influence. That's a whole issue on itself, but nobody's addressing it. The other issue that I have, and this is quite critical for the state of Oregon, is transportation of our products that we manufacture, and also what we grow. For example, got a hop farmer in Kaiser, major hop farmer. He's sending his hops to the Czech Republic. How do you get them there? You know, Port of Portland, they think Port of Portland belongs to Portland. No, it doesn't. It belongs to the state of Oregon. And that's been shut down for how long? Nobody cares. It's not one of those hot button health issues or age issues or education issues. But if our workers, and I don't care who they are on the spectrum, if they can't get their products to market, then we're sunk, despite the fact that you mentioned we're 45% higher than we were. We could be so much more. If you'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, well, you're correct. The governor has made both those problems a lot worse. She hasn't made them better, she's made them worse. I mean, it's her responsibility that the Port of Portland shut down. So you couldn't convene the unions and broker an agreement. And they were some of her biggest supporters. If you can't get your supporters around in a room and convene an agreement, good luck doing it when you have people that are, not your supporters. And that contributed to the traffic difficulties in Portland. Because now all those trucks that used to go out, and the trailers that used to go out the Port of Portland are crossing the bridge to go up to Vancouver and the Port of Tacoma. Try going from Portland north any time, it's backed up. And a lot of that is truck traffic because they're trying to get across that pinch point at the bridge. And crime made that worse too. Decriminalize the possession of powerful drugs like heroin and meth. Decriminalize. So what stops people from walking around with heroin and meth now if you know you're just going to get barely a slap on the wrist? And I don't know if you realize it, but now Portland has more auto thefts per capita than almost any other city in the nation. Third worst in the nation. Only behind, get this, Detroit and Baltimore, then Portland. Okay? I don't think anyone wants to see their city ranked with Detroit and Baltimore, especially when it comes to a crime statistic. And that's because some judges refused to prosecute car thieves when the evidence was overwhelming that they had stolen a car. And there was a fix in the legislature, and the governor did nothing to get that bill through the legislative process.
And neither
So
did
now we have a mess.
and neither did our own Nancy Nathanson.
That's
There.
right.
She's on Ways and Means.
That's right. That's right. You know, there, in fact, a Democrat from Beaverton, Jeff Barker, was the one who introduced the bill, but had no support from his Democratic leadership colleagues to get that through. So now we have a big problem in the Portland metro area, which I suspect will spread elsewhere to the state of Oregon, where you can essentially steal a car and have very little chance of being prosecuted.
Wasn't there argument that they would save money by not putting the people in jail?
That was their argument, not with the car thieves, but with the possession of drugs. Yeah. Listen. We need to find more dollars if we can't lock up people in possession of heroin.
Your thoughts on the death tax?
I think we have a state tax that is too low. We need to align that with federal standards right now. So right now, it kicks in at $1 million. We should align it with federal standards like most other states. Because right now, you have an incentive to move out of state before you die. You know, being in Bend and having a medical practice where I treat a lot of people over 65 who come there to retire, I can't tell you how many times I've had patients in my exam room and I become friends with them over the long term, and all of a sudden they're, 75 or so, and said, "Oh, dude, find me a doctor that I can go to in Phoenix or Henderson, Nevada or something." And I go, "Why are you moving from Bend?" "Well, my accountant, my trust lawyer says that I can't afford to die in Oregon." True story. True story. They can't afford to die in Oregon.
I just want to clarify, you're for the death tax?
I'm for increasing it up to the federal level.
Even though
So
it's already been taxed before.
up to the $5 million level. That way it just kind of levels it across the federal level. So, but the federal, it'll probably increase again up, I think with the latest proposal, up to $10 million.
I just wanted to say that I think most of the people in this room know how Kate Brown has come out vocally and right out the front door with, we're going to do everything we can to thwart anything that President Trump is trying to push through, including his cutbacks on the egregious agency penalties, and it goes on and on. What would you do to roll back what this woman has said? We've got resist, we're going to come out. Where do you even dig that root out?
Yeah. I think Governor Brown is excessively focused on divisive national politics in fighting Trump. And I'd have a whole different approach. I'd flip it 180 degrees and be focused on fixing local problems. And when Trump is right, I'll agree with him. And when he's wrong, I'll disagree, and it's necessary to speak up. I don't believe in blind loyalty to anybody. except for maybe my wife, is about the but I think that's the approach that we all expect is where we're going. It's, you know, when you agree with someone, you agree with them, and if you disagree, you speak up and say you disagree.
And you mentioned cap and tax, or fuel carbon. I had occasion to fly back from somewhere today, or not today, a few days ago, and speak for 2 hours with a guy who was a representative from the United Steelworkers. And he explained to me, which I did not know, why we lost the big steel facility in Vancouver and why the one in Troutdale had to close down and the deregulation and how that all happened. I think that Oregon has been the poster child for screwing our own businesses. What can we do to fix that?
Well, we need to have a different approach. We need to have a different relationship between our state government and our business. Right now, it's a very antagonistic, negative, you know, gotcha type of relationship, and how much money can we squeeze out of businesses? Under me, it'd be very different. It would be a partnership for success for businesses. The state needs to be there to support our businesses, be that partner for business success. Many of you know how hard it is to start and build a business. And you want a government there helping you. Almost all business owners that I know want to do the right thing. They want to follow the law. They want to be good citizens. We need a state government that's there to help them do the right thing, not to put tons and tons of regulation on them. Tell a business owner what's expected of them, what the outcomes you want, and help them get there. Not giving 800 pages of very detailed laws that they can't understand, just trying to run their daily business.
Would you try to get more revenue out of the timber in the state of Oregon? What do you think about timber cutting?
Yeah, I think we've mismanaged our forest, and importantly, mismanaged the way we fight forest fires for decades. And the results of that, we've seen summer after summer after summer, and these out-of-control fires. There's way more growth than harvest right now. We've got to put that back in balance. And actually, that's good environmental policy.
Amen.
That's good environmental policy. Think of the carbon footprint. Think of the carbon footprint of the fires this summer in Oregon. 600,000 acres burned. The carbon footprint of those 600,000 acres was the equivalent if you drove every car in Oregon for 3 years straight. If we really want to lower our carbon footprint from the state of Oregon, I think that's a worthy goal. We should try to get there. We should control these forest fires. That's the most important.
Well, this is something that never gets talked about, electromagnetic pulse and protecting our infrastructure. I mean, if we can do it for $2 billion for the United States, we can do it for Oregon. And this is something that literally wipes out the electrical grid. It kills cars, computers, nothing will work. Would you be willing to look into protecting Oregon's electrical grid?
Yeah.
It's very simple to do.
Yeah. That's a great question, and an issue that not very many people know about. But actually, I've already made a positive impact with that. And here's the history. Let's give it a back. You can knock out our electric grid by a very unsophisticated nuclear blast that doesn't even have to hit a specific target, but just kind of spreads electromagnetic energy over a wide geographic area and takes down the grid. It takes down the grid in a way that you can't recover for a year or two. Can you imagine not having electricity for a year or two? How many lives you lose? It's a big problem. There's things you can do to harden the grid, and importantly, create microgrids that have local power supply. So what I did in 2016 in a bill called Coal to Clean, I wrote in incentives to create local renewables, require local renewables that can support a microgrid in the occasion of that. Solar, biomass.
And North Korea already has 2 satellites to go over us.
Yeah.
We don't know.
That's it.
So, Knute, it's not necessarily a question. I hope people understand we have a real opportunity here. I've gotten to know Knute pretty well the last few years, and when he talked to me in August about what his plans were, I jumped on immediately. I got to tell you, folks, I know there's questions about Portland, but you need to understand there are more people in Washington County and Clackamas County combined than Multnomah County. There's a great strategy, and if there's someone who can do this, I think Knute is the guy. And you know what? There may be disagreements with folks in the base. There may be some sort of disagreement somewhere, but I've been married 26 years. I will assure you I've not agreed with my wife, and she's not agreed with me on every single thing. So, and those of us who've been married will know that. What I do believe, though, is I think Knute has a great chance here to do this. We have a governor who's very vulnerable. I've heard many Democrats, by the way, I just ran into one a couple weeks ago who heard you speak, and she has said, I find him to be someone that I could support. And I got to tell you, that's going to go a long way. You know, I know we have a primary, but folks, I think Knute is the only one who has a legitimate chance to win this election in November. And I'm hopeful that you'll really listen to what he has to say, follow him, whether it's online, through his website, social media. He's got an active Twitter account, I can tell you that, but it's really, really good, and I hope folks will really take a look at this and be on board to support Knute. I know I am, and I have been since day one, and I'm clearly, I think we've got a great opportunity here.
So I appreciate it very much. We're not all going to agree on things, but I can guarantee you that 80% of the time we're going to agree on almost all of this, right? Improving our schools, of having high quality health care to bring some sanity to our taxes and budget, and importantly, provide much needed leadership to this state. So I'd love to have your support. You know, see Quinn, send us an email, spread the word, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We have a great video right now calling out Governor Brown for her mismanagement of the Oregon Health Authority and the waste and incompetence there. And that's not my words, that's words from nearly every single editorial board in the state of Oregon. Share that video, send it around to your friends, get the word out. One of the most valuable things this campaign can do is to educate Oregonians with regards to the change this state so desperately needs. So, Steve, thank you very much.
Yep. For coming. This concludes our meeting today. It went really quick for me anyway, and I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you next year.